Good morning, Gerald 508. Alright, so thank you, Faye and Sarah, for a very, very spirited lead on discussion on a very important topic, and that's mental health, mental health and diseases of mental health, and really tapped into kind of the essence of brain development, the ontogeny, where we go all the way through to adulthood, and so in essence the idea that as the brain gets refined and wired developmentally, there's a critical period in terms of all of the biogenic means, serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, and how they're really developing the wiring in areas like our prefrontal cortex that control emotion and decision making and things like that. And this is why we see a higher rate of clinical depression in the late teen, early 20 years. And there's a lot goes into it. You'll hear classifications of appropriate versus inappropriate depression. Things are going great. You're on top of the world and yet you're depressed. Okay, so that might mean that genetically you're predisposed to a difference in terms of the level of those biogenic means and how they are directing the circuits to be formed in your brain. Okay, we then have kind of traumatic events that change levels of things like cortisol, which then alters levels like of serotonin receptors and things like that are termed oftentimes appropriate depression. And you have to remember that as we get older, that the cortisol levels stay higher much longer. They're chronically higher as we get older because our regulatory system for shutting it off is not as good. And so this then can cause a very precipitous event of clinical depression, and the hopelessness of being alone when you lose a spouse or something like that leads to greater incidence of suicide. So this was really laid out great, and I really appreciate the way everybody really opened up about their own personal experiences. Just looking at the discussion banter is like we suddenly had on board 22 therapists that could sit there and counsel and help each other out, and that's what friends are for, which is really, really cool. Okay, so I set up I'm going to send you a link along with this, and I set it up in Lena and Phil's discussion, this really great article by Psychology Today talking about these alternative ways to reduce your risk of depression. And real simple things: exposure to sunlight. Remember that increases vitamin D levels, which help to elevate serotonin. Light coming in through your eyeballs actually activates the neural circuits to cause direct release of serotonin. We've all heard of seasonal affective disorder, where there's low levels of light and the incidence of depression doubles or triples. Exercise, tryptophan, all these different types of things are out there. So again, we have the opportunity for healthy living to take the bull by the horns. So that's what that's all about. Okay, and Lena and Phil actually tap into serotonin, into clinical depression and the pharmacology therein in a great way. Now, what Lena and Phil did, I applaud them because they were very, very creative, and it's just a matter of learning new software. And so I've produced a link, and I was hoping maybe Lena and Phil could educate us some more. Maybe provide something that I could send out to the class as a blast email about how to develop the really neat interactive presentation that they did in Google Docs. Okay, and so I will send you a how-to link, and then hopefully Phil and Lena will follow up a little bit. So really neat. And what I liked about their presentation, also they took a unique approach. Okay, they took all 8 of the suggested associated readings that go along with the chapter and critiqued those readings and showed how they complemented the existing chapters. So that was really great, because that really made the whole thing a lot easier on all of this. and they got into the biology. The pharmacokinetics. What do kinetics mean? Kinetics are speed. How quickly do the drugs get into the bloodstream? How long do they stay there at their level? What are all the kinetic parameters? And then Lena discussed issues like clearance of drugs. We have kidneys and liver. These are our detox factories, and no big surprise, a couple people commented how depressing the biology can be. It is, and the liver and kidney function go down as we get older, so therefore these drugs stay elevated in our bloodstream, and so you have to devise, as a clinician, a unique regime for the elder client, okay, and you have to monitor this closely because the drugs can stay up longer, become toxic, and then especially when there are multiple drugs, as Phil was talking about, you get the polypharmacy drug interactions, and it really causes a decline in health significantly. Going back to the earlier discussion on nutrition, the drugs that elders take also can impact absorption in the gut and distribution. Okay. One other thing I want to talk about in terms of distribution, a lot of drugs are water soluble. Some drugs, however, are fat soluble, and unfortunately, as we get older, we lose lean muscle mass, and we tend to tap on a few fat pounds, and so a lot of these drugs, they like to wedge their cells into the fat cells, and this makes them very long lasting. Okay, so these drugs will basically kind of take on this like time release function out of your fat cells. So that's another thing that contributes to what's going on. So watch their video. It's freaking amazing. Okay, they really go over things great, and then they provided the PowerPoint. So go ahead and look through the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is basically a reiteration of their video, but with slightly greater detail. And then, as you capture in all that knowledge of science, they take a more kind of social science approach, which I think is appropriate, and what your roles are as now gerontology students that are educated in terms of monitoring the drug effects in seniors that you know, or maybe in the workplace. Okay, so great job, and I'm almost starting to get teary-eyed. We have one more lecture, one more YouTube from Dr. Walsh. All right, take care.